А что тебе
Yeah.
All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. We have a bit of a packed day because I want to make sure we get to both activities using GitHub Copilot. Before we do, I'll briefly introduce the next few, like the games that we're going to play at the start of lecture. This one, I think someone in this class, like a first lecture, was telling me about this after lecture. So I think if you're in the room, I must have forgotten. You could come up after and remind me or something. It's this game called Time Guesser. Basically, the way this works is that you get shown a picture, of just anywhere in the world, and then you have to guess two things. You have to guess where the picture was taken, like the location, and the year that the picture was taken, okay? So this one is like a picture in color, and so maybe we kind of get a hint, but a lot of these pictures are in like black and white, and going after it's, 1990s or before, it's really hard to like tell when a picture was taken, so it's pretty interesting. Okay, let's just do like one round of this. This is like a daily thing where you answer like 5 of these in one day, but we don't have the time for all of that. Let's just maybe take a second. I'll zoom in on a couple of things, and then if people want to tell me where they think the location is, they can give a guess. But it looks like we have these police officers here. We have something that says Land's End. It says New York. John O'Groats. Maybe that's the start of something. Isles of Scilly. I don't know what that is.
Is that misspelling?
I don't know. I have no idea. So, okay, let's go ahead and just guess the location. Where do people think this is? You only get like one guess, really. Yeah. Yeah, the UK. Yeah, what side of it do we think? Left, right, top,
Can you look at the whole image?
This is the whole image, right? Or, oh, sorry, this.
Because it's pointing to New York, like from the ocean.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, let's go on the left. That's an awesome guess. Do we think it's like Ireland or? Okay, let's do. Let's do this. Let's just guess. Oh, it says Land's End. Okay, that's a big giveaway. Now let's just guess the year. What year do we think this was taken in? Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
Can you zoom in on the front?
There's a phone.
The guy
Oh my god. Wow. Okay, how clear was that iPhone? What do we think? Oh, you think that's an early one? 2018. Alright, I heard 2018. Let's just guess it and then move on with the lecture. Okay, yeah, we were 6 kilometers away. I probably should have done right on the coast. Oh, it's 2012. If anybody said that, good job. If you got that from the iPhone, that's also impressive. That's good detective work right there. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, just the same announcements as last time. Project 3 is out. Group project proposals are due tomorrow. And then importantly, there's a new reflection survey for feedback. Please try to do that by tomorrow if you can. And this one is collecting your email addresses as a reminder. Still be very honest about the criticism that you have, or even positive things that you might have. But we'll just check for completion on this as well. All right, let's get into the material. So let's start with Project 2 grading. Some of you have already started getting feedback on Project 2. I really want to clear this up. I think I should have mentioned this at the start of the project as well. But fortunately, we have this process where we'll do a code review and then y'all will take the feedback and make changes. So I think our goal for this is to request quite a few changes, okay, related to big picture stuff, like the actual approach that you use, but also more maybe nitpicky stuff like code style, formatting, white space, the variable names, stuff like that. I'll be honest, I think looking through a lot of the code reviews, there's so many changes that we could request that we don't have the time for grading and then for checking everything. And there's also, so many different types of feedback, right? We can give something related to the diagramming and, expect changes related to that, or the code style, or the overall implementation. So, I hope just the takeaway from, we're giving maybe up to 5 or 6 changes requested for each, submission, but keep in mind there could be more. We really just want the takeaway to be like how the code review process actually works in a company. It's a very deliberate and like you'll almost never get it approved on the first sort of like pull request. You'll get so many changes requested. We're just trying to emulate that, but keep in mind we are not giving an exhaustive code review, okay? There's one thing I do specifically want to point out though, and it relates to grading as well. So there's maybe like 4 or 5 different approaches that we've seen for project 2, okay? One could involve like adding a new parameter in the query class, okay? One of them can involve, making a call to some existing function in editor.py, okay? One can involve using like self.text. So I just mentioned a few of these. We'll definitely give specific feedback on your individual project, but there is like one approach that we think has like the best code quality, okay, that we would have probably liked to see in like all of the submissions. But don't worry if you didn't do that on the first approach. Like we sort of want to just give the code review and have y'all implement the sort of change that we are requesting. What we'll do for like grading purposes is we'll request that change to use this sort of like better code quality approach. And if you make that change, then you'll get like full points back for code quality. You can also choose to not make that change. That's totally fine. Just keep in mind that that'll sort of affect your grade a bit. Okay. I don't know the exact percentage. Like most people will get, if you completed the project, you'll definitely get above like an 85%. Right? Like we'll just keep it where if you respond to our sort of request for the approach that you took, you'll definitely get full points back for that sort of like aspect of your grading. Yeah, question?
So what's the timeline that we have to respond to?
Oh yeah, good question.
And
so,
another question.
Oh yeah.
And like, you mean code quality, like just the code changes in the code part, or like, and then, because I got some comment about like putting screenshots in a folder and stuff.
Oh yeah. Okay, awesome. So, okay, the first question was the timeline for this. I think I'll set a hard deadline of like next Thursday, but the thing is like, I think I graded a couple people's code reviews. I did a couple of code reviews yesterday. I'll do a few today and I'll probably get to some tomorrow. So like Friday, that's like a difference of a couple of days from the first people to the last people. So we definitely want to give enough time. I'll set the hard deadline for next Thursday's class, okay? So you do have some time to implement it. I also know there's the group project going on, project 3, etc. Again, I'm not so strict about deadlines. It's more about actually reading the review and making a response to it. Sorry, what was the second? Oh yeah, the second question was about the other like changes requested, right? So the main request that we're gonna request, if you didn't do this like optimal approach, we're definitely gonna request that you do the optimal approach. But like almost everybody will also get changes related to code quality, code style, formatting, maybe the diagram, maybe documentation. So I think one that I'm giving is if you have like extra new lines created, like inside of a function, okay? We want to remove those new lines. That's not really something that exists throughout the code base except for between methods, okay? Like we have some new lines between methods to separate those, but within a function, we don't want to have these like unnecessary new lines. Another thing will be like the variable naming, whether you use snake case or camel case. I think the question was about like reorganizing files. If you don't have like a project 2 folder and just have a bunch of images or files in the main idle.lib directory, that's also something we want to clean up, okay? So there's sort of so many such requests that we could make, and we'll hopefully give you like 4 or 5 in your submission as well. You'll want to make all of those changes to get like full points back for any of those requested changes, okay? As long as you do all of the requested changes, you'll get a pretty good score. We might make some like minor adjustments based on the quality of the diagram or the quality of the process journal design document and maybe like the full functionality that you implement. Of course, if you implement everything, you'll get full points, but some people did more as well. So those things will have like sort of minor impacts, but if you respond to the code changes, then we're not going to penalize you for that initial submission. Okay? Does that make sense? Are there any questions?
We technically have to do all the things that...
Yes, you should do all of the code changes that we have requested. And hopefully most of them are code formatting or style, so they won't take too long. Yes?
Yeah, just a general question about like whether a file should have access to certain other classes or files. Like how do we know that we are able to we should have access to like import other classes, other files and classes. How do we know that?
How do you know?
So like for example, in the like adder.py, how do we know that if we want to import something like for example from format.py, like we can just anything we needed, we can just actually like import it?
Yeah. So if that's sort of the design decision or like the approach that you have found works, you can definitely use that approach. I would emphasize though in the design document, you'll want to describe why you're making that, decision and why you think it's, a good approach or a necessary approach. Yeah, you can sort of take liberty in whatever approach that you want to take, keeping in mind that there's like code quality is a bit of a subjective thing. Like you can reasonably make arguments that one approach is better than another, and we're doing our best to read all those like decisions and give you points based on that. But to answer your question, yes, you can do that if you want. But there might be some code quality issues related to it that we'll try to point out, and then hopefully you can fix. Does that answer your question? Okay. I thought I was gonna say one more thing here, but oh yeah, the last thing. Let me just say, make a new commit. So, make a commit to the same PR. Rather than like closing your existing pull request or I don't know, like deleting it and making a new one, you can just actually add another git commit to the same branch that the pull request already exists in, and then we'll be able to see those changes. Okay, so you can respond in a comment to what I have sort of like given a comment to. You can, say, hey, I've completed my feedback and I implemented these changes, and then you'll make a commit with, those changes in place, and that's how we'll be able to sort of review your changes, okay? Are there any questions about Project 2 grading or how this like code review process will go? All right, if there are any questions, please post on EdStem, email me, etc. Okay, the group project proposals are due tomorrow. I just want to clear up if there's any questions about what to include in them. Remember, we do have the directions posted on the website here. This is a bit sort of like open-ended because we don't know what ideas y'all all will come up with. But I've maybe clarified a bit more here what to actually include. So aside from the title and team members, have like a couple paragraphs describing what the feature is that you want to implement, and of course the motivation for that project, like whether you're hoping to have the project help people who are just learning to program for the first time, or to make life a bit easier if you're using idle. Maybe an image or something, or a quick mock-up of what you imagine the final feature looking like would be useful. And then the project outline. I think this is where, in this project proposal, we're hoping that you have done a little bit of like background reading or code comprehension in the code base, or just Googling stuff related to your feature, where you can sort of envision the smaller tasks that you might have to do, okay? So I'll just give an example. I was talking to one group in office hours yesterday where they were thinking about implementing syntax highlighting, okay? Syntax highlighting is where, the functions are colored as like yellow, the variables are blue, and then I guess we have these like objects and classes that are green. You wouldn't want to just end the proposal as like, we're gonna do syntax highlighting and then say like, I don't know, you might look a little bit into the code base and say that we want to like identify functions and color those one way, classes another way. You might want to like look up how syntax highlighting is done in other like common IDEs like VS Code, and then you probably, I think I had mentioned this to the group that had come to office hours, but there's these things called language server protocols. Okay, these are things that are implemented in like VS Code, like these like high-powered IDEs that are able to do the static code analysis to decide like what is a variable, what is a class, what is a method, and that's how it does sort of the automatic highlighting, okay? So you'd want to probably look into something like this, describe like what you imagine having to implement or what other libraries or frameworks you might have to use, and that's gonna like help us as the core staff understand the scope of your project and sort of how difficult it's going to be, okay? So please try to include that in your project as well, and then the checkpoint deliverables is mostly like a timeline. What will you have done by checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, and then final project? and it's okay if you don't stick to this. That happens so much where we'll say like, I want to accomplish this, this, and this, and maybe you can't even get to the first one because it's way more complicated. Okay, so just it's okay to propose something more like what is it? More grandiose or difficult, and it's okay to not accomplish all those requirements. Right? Any questions on the group project proposal? Also, I think, hopefully everybody has a team by now. If you don't, or if you don't have 4 people, please respond to the post that Cushy had made on EdSTEM a couple days ago. We'll do our best to sort of match and get 12 groups of 4, since we do have 48 students. But if that's not done yet, like please email. You can even email me like right now and say you don't have a team or you don't have a team of 4. Okay? Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and get to the material. So I want to start just as a quick reminder about the code comprehension features in GitHub Copilot for GitHub Copilot. So I'm not going to re-show these again, basically, but actually maybe I'll just very quickly show how to access like the chat, and then let me do a new one. Remember, you can like highlight code. This is just like a general way to interact with GitHub Copilot. Let me make this bigger. You'll want to like highlight code, and then if you do Command-I on the highlighted code, that brings up this inline interface, okay, inline chat with GitHub Copilot. When you do this \explain, okay, then you'll sort of be able to prompt it with any question that you might have about the highlighted code, and it'll sort of be able to answer it, okay? Another quick reminder, you can use this like actual chat feature. You can do @workspace, and ask it questions where it'll sort of look through the tokens in your workspace, look through the files, and try to answer whatever question you ask it, okay? I think let's end it there. I want to have y'all just use these features to understand a specific part of the code base, and I want to give y'all enough time for this. Let me just direct you to the part of the code base that I want you to sort of explore using Copilot, okay? You might be able to answer these questions a bit like in a different way without using Copilot. You can feel free to experiment with that, but the goal here is for you to just practice using the features in Copilot, okay? So the area of the code base is going to be this search text function, okay? It's in line 102 in search engine.py. And I think sort of the quick motivation here is I was just looking through the different files to figure out what's a good in-class activity for this specifically, and I just came across this. I was really confused, and then I just started chatting with GitHub Copilot to figure out more about it, okay? So I want y'all to do something similar. Here's the bit.ly link. Here are 3 specific questions, but I think you can even go above and beyond this just by trying to understand maybe some of the things that this method calls, etc. But let's just start with this. Take your time to sort of experiment with this GitHub chat feature, with highlighting, and remember you can highlight and then Command-I on a Mac. That's how you pull up this inline view. And I'll give y'all enough time for this, okay? We'll be walking around, me and the tutors, if you have any questions or technical issues. If you don't have GitHub Copilot yet, just look with the person next to you and y'all can just work together. For me, it's always
Oh yeah, sure.
just by the text.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Okay, yeah, I guess just see
If I kind of wanted to kind of pop it in,
You take a screenshot with
it was like a screen, it was like a PDF image that had like a really small piece of it.
Oh yeah.
It's really funny, you don't ever tell you, like, oh, it's just a little bit, but it's never this fine.
Yeah. You know, like, gotta
Yeah. They never gave me a
You also need to make sure you like fill out your where you have your states.
change your like you track or whatever you do. You don't have to register the card. I just took a screenshot of the first page. And then, no,
What is the
But if you're it just lists all.
and then apply again your you get the transfer. Don't call yourself. Be working on it. It took two and then so wait for the third one.
There.
Do the end of the quarter, in which case they, yeah, they reached out. Or it's either end of the semester.
Otherwise, like, there's a lot of students that are
Honestly,
they
don't respond.
a lot of features, but
No.
issues.
I never got a comment.
And so,
No, like,
just
the email,
They don't reply.
they don't reply. Make a phone call. No, we shall be first. All
Like they review. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
No.
Because it's not very specific.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's this point we got a small launch like forum thing. We can answer questions ourselves. And there's not much you can do.
Can you look down which parsons?
Yeah, then on the top.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't expect.
Oh, you mean, yeah.
Like match it, like, I don't want it.
I got a through.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even actually.
I was like, do I add that? I ended up not really adding. I added
What is
something
it?
like
It seems like in
I
my
added
because I wanted to stay consistent, but I saw that. I think is things like, oh, if I actually match this stuff. They also actually go back and review those comments I made and attempt to be helpful, but yeah.
I'm so writing.
Start back.
Wait, so it's giving you
Like it seems like this is how people do this. I'm sure you guys. Either professional setting is okay. I'm not sure. Either end. So it's what in terms of smart.
I'm not sure if that's a good copilot error.
So quantum, yes. Make sure you have your two-factor authentication now. There's no explanation for mine, so I literally have to do it. It's all over the place. All the
For saying how you.
I guess you can go to the extension.
Maybe I'm just tired. That's also good.
You can always frame it yourself.
Oh yeah, I tried that. Did you use Star?
I can see how better Windows is than this. But it's like, it's not.
Like the exploration activity.
After you got
So I did, and then I go to.
I'm usually like
Oh yeah. Oh. That was great. Yeah, we were coworkers.
Yeah.
In the beginning. You can try switching. Oh, same thing. Yeah, let's go to the extension. Oh, that's a good.
Alright, so what your idea?
If that doesn't work, we'll just switch to the previous version.
So you said something about like how the you need a whole piece of that. As long as you're also you won't be paying $10.
So like,
I signed up for
Oh, you want to do a little.
yeah, so then,
You can, yeah, I'm here, try it. Oh, you don't have, oh, okay. Yeah, try it, I'm curious.
It takes time.
Oh, you got it.
The people students. Because it takes time.
Yeah, how long ago did you?
I don't know.
It was a long time ago though, or like, is it called? Yeah, requesting. But did you request? Oh, you just now did it, okay. Yeah, it'll take a few days. Yeah.
and then once,
Wait, do you have a question? Okay.
Like, how much are we saying? It'll make like a.
We said it is working or it isn't working?
Next time you just like, it would be something like this.
right clicking on it, but I wasn't.
And instead of this, it'll show like the image. Or like a widget. It'll open a widget of like every single image.
So, that's why I like this.
Okay, so like.
It wasn't.
Okay, so.
so you just want to see
It wasn't really like a static. Or well, I think, we can sort of figure out what. Yeah, so just try it with different, you can try highlighting the full month.
Don't make like a bunch of these are just
Doing it first, right? That's probably good.
Yeah, just make them.
You can do an inline one, like just try it. I'm not exactly sure you do the inline
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
explain where the places are. Or you can just ask everybody, like,
I mean,
yeah, just ask their space and see like where.
In the sense of like, don't user really beginning.
Okay, but then
And also if you've gotten like the first two, see if you can like actually pull up the prompt that determines if we search forward or backwards, okay? That might be a bit more straightforward, but then you can, I don't know, if you have extra time, you can put the debugger somewhere and like actually cause a search and then see how it works.
What your last name?
Okay, 0 and exact.
Like you mean like when you click on the bottom right, like icon?
Yeah, well, even that, but like, just maybe that's like
Whatever file you do, does it start?
It starts from that.
You must have I think what you peek over is
I was gonna.
oh yeah, there. I think you want to just kind of like just Google Forms extension.
Oh, proposal.
How would you students in our country that we make this Worst case, like you have until early next week before the assignment will be for using
We have one.
Okay, everyone. How do we feel actually? Raise your hand if you are sort of like wrapping up this activity and want us to go over it now. You just raise your hand with that. Okay, how many of y'all would want a bit more time to work on this? Okay, it's kind of even split. Let's give it another like minute or two, and try to at least get the Google Forms submitted.
I kept having.
Well, it just.
Yeah, I guess.
What is this?
I realized this, right,
My understanding is like there's two functionalities to like one of them is like determining where to start. And then the other, I'm not really sure.
No,
okay, actually, I have next question.
As well as something else, so that I don't.
Okay, let's wrap up the Google Form responses in the next, like 30 seconds here, and then we'll start going over it.
Start up with the last show first, so that thing right there. I don't see it in this method.
It has to do with how it speaks to all this. Like,
let's start to go over this now. So, yeah, okay, I know some of y'all still don't have GitHub Copilot set up. That's totally okay. For this lecture, work with the person next to you in the meantime, or you can also try to figure this out in like a conventional manner without using GitHub Copilot. I think that's also like super useful here. Just a quick roadmap of what's going to happen is, I think I was going to release project 4 today. We still have to finish the write-up, so I'm thinking I'll release it either Friday or Monday, because I know there's still the project 3 and the group project. That project, project 4, is going to involve you fully using GitHub Copilot, or using it as much as possible to implement the new feature, okay? So hopefully we all have GitHub Copilot by like early next week. If, you know, by tomorrow or over the weekend you still don't have Copilot, please make a private Edstep post and maybe like the error message that you're getting, and then hopefully you can Google the error message that it shows. Like, it'll probably have like a line through the GitHub icon down here. You can click on that. It'll you know, if it's all good and working, it'll say ready. Otherwise, you'll have some error message here. Please Google that error message and see. There's probably other students that had the same stuff, same issue, just like using GitHub Copilot. And so please try to look that up and try to get it resolved. But please post about it over the weekend, so I just know how many of us are still unable to get it. All right. Okay, so let's go over how people sort of approach this. So can someone explain to me what is the OK parameter, and yeah, like sort of like what it does in the context of the search in idle? Someone got an explanation that they feel confident in? Yeah.
It determines like whether or not. So when you select a piece of text that's like the beginning of the section and end of the selection, it determines whether or not the search function starts searching from the beginning of your selection or the end.
Whether it starts. Okay, so let me actually just try running it. So this would be like file, new file, and let's just copy paste this whole thing in here. So you're saying like if we just like highlight something, do like file, sorry, where is it? Edit, yeah, find, right? So okay, we're looking for the word wrapped. And by the way, this is like the actual feature, one of the features that uses the function that we were just looking at. You can change the direction to be up or down. So you're saying whether it starts looking at the end of the selection that we had. Can you like expand on that a little bit? So like let's say we have this. If OK is true, what is it going to start looking at?
Okay, so my understanding is that we selected multiple lines, let's
Oh, it's skip everything that's inside. Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Does anybody else have like an explanation for OK that they're like pretty confident in or was pretty clear to them? Okay, actually, let's just start with this. Was it clear what OK was from reading this? Like, did this give people a pretty good understanding of it, or was Copilot sort of helpful in figuring it out? Raise your hand if this was like pretty clear enough already. I'm like genuinely asking. I'm just sorry. Okay. So that's what I was sort of hoping for here. I was like super confused by this, like what the OK parameter is, and also like if you read the code a little bit, like you can see that there's just like this if OK, and then start equals last. Otherwise, I guess in this like big else thing, depending on the order that we're searching, otherwise start is first. So I guess, yeah, this is sort of determining where the starting indices are. We have like a decent understanding of that. I'll just show sort of what my process here was. First, I highlighted the entire file, okay? I actually highlighted the entire file and I did like Command I, and then asked it to just explain this whole thing, okay? I just did this command. And that's what you're seeing as my first sort of thing here. By the way, you can always see the history of all your chats if you click this little icon over here, okay? So what I'm going to be showing right now, I'm not going to do it live because I was happy with what it had shown me before. I thought there's some good lessons here. But I had done this maybe a couple days ago and I'm just referring to the history, okay? At any point you can also find your own history by clicking the same thing here. So when you ask it to explain the whole class, it's pretty useful. It gives like a high-level overview of what the class is, and then a couple like important dependencies or like objects used in that. And then of course it also goes through like each method. Okay, each paragraph had a pretty helpful description of each method. Okay. Also, one more tip here: all these things that are in blue. Okay, you'll notice that some of these are in white, some of these are in blue. When you click the ones in blue, it'll actually take you to that location in the code base. Okay. That's something that's really useful, and I'll show why that's useful in a second. But you know, a lot of times it'll just mention stuff here in other files, and we don't know if this thing actually exists in that file. But when it's blue, you can click on it and actually see the source code that it's referring to. Okay, so there's this added step of like verifying that what it's relying on is actually something that exists in the code base. So it does give a bit of a description here. It says OK is a parameter that controls how the search is performed. If a selection exists in the text widget, the search begins at either end of the selection, depending on this flag and the OK parameter. Okay. It also felt like it didn't really give an explanation of the OK parameter here. So then I highlighted this function specifically. Okay, the search text function, and it tells you sort of like what it relied on. When you click the references here, and you can actually expand it, it'll show you the specific parts in the code base that it used. And then again, it gives a description of, like a little more in-depth description of the function. I won't go through everything here, but let's see where it talks about OK. All right, yeah. It sets the starting point of the search to either the beginning or end of the selection, okay? Still, I wasn't very sort of like on board or like happy with that description. Then I just said I'm really confused about the OK parameter. Can you give me an example of what it is and how it impacts the application? Okay. It says that it's a Boolean flag that influences how the search operation is conducted. And then this was really helpful. Okay. And I actually recommend. I kind of wish that I had worded this question. Oh no, I did say it. Can you give an example? Okay. That's one thing I think Copilot and GPT are quite good at, because it uses like a set of tokens that's just like publicly accessible code, okay? So one thing it is good at is it's recognized a lot of code patterns and is able to sort of pick up on like the code patterns that we have in our code base and just give like general descriptions of what it's doing, okay? So asking for an example, I think, is one of the most useful like learning applications of these tools, whether it's like you're learning a new language and you just want, can you give me some simple, Java code that uses, a constructor, but also for like this code base, okay? It keeps saying this thing about like starting at the beginning or end of the selection for the search. And I think what helped the most for me to understand it was this code example here, okay? So it just gives like text equals hello world, and it says, say the selection is 0 to 5, okay? So 0 to 5 would just be this, like HELLO. And it says the search pattern is O, right? If we call search text with OK equals false, and the search direction is forward, the search will start at the end of the selection, okay? So that means the returned value is going to be the O that is after our search selection. So the O that starts at the end of whatever we've highlighted, okay? If OK is true, it'll return a match at the starting position. Oh yeah, sorry. If OK is true, the search will start at the beginning of the selection, okay? So it'll start with this H, and then the value that it returns is this O here, okay? I actually think this is not a great name for the parameter OK. I think what it really means, like, is it okay to find the value in our search? But this is probably something where, if this was like in a code review for what y'all do for Project 3, we would probably give a comment to like rename the variable or rename the parameter to be a little bit more useful, okay? But also, I think they did give a big description here in the doc string. One thing to keep in mind is like when you use the @workspace command here, the response generated by Copilot will use this these set of tokens for its answer, okay? So one thing I want to be clear, I was thinking of like doing this as an activity where if we just like remove all of these comments, I don't think it would be able to give as strong of a description of what the OK parameter means, okay? So I would say like, don't think of Copilot as like a replacement for documentation, or like, oh, if something is not documented at all or unclear in the code base, I can just use Copilot to understand it. Think of like documentation and like good names for variables and like a good code style as something that helps Copilot give like use better context to give your answer, okay? So rather than like, oh, I don't need to document code anymore, or like, we have these like static analysis tools that can decipher even the most complicated tools, and just make sure you don't sort of like fall victim to that, okay? And yeah, hopefully this was like somewhat of a useful activity to see like how the code comprehension in GitHub Copilot can help solve like things that you otherwise would be pretty confused of through like code reading or experimenting. And like hopefully here it was just a lot faster process. Otherwise I probably would have used a debugger, seen some different examples of where in the code base this is called, and try to like piece it together that way. But I think this conversation was like so much quicker than going through that whole process. Okay. The next one that I actually want to show is just, I'll just do the second question, and then we'll leave it at that. So what y'all might have noticed is if you did search text and did go to references, okay, it'll just take you up to this line in the test search engine, okay? So let me just show that again. Let's do, we can do peak references, okay? The only references that it actually pulls up are in test search engine and then the actual method itself, okay? Which is a bit surprising, I think. Like normally we've been able to use find all references and it actually shows us like all the locations that it does show up. I'm actually not 100% sure why the like language server is not able to determine this. It probably has to do with like this being, wait, does someone have an idea actually of why we're not able to see the references? Anybody know? I genuinely don't know, so if someone has a good guess, like please let me know, or just like, yeah, any hypothesis. Okay, maybe I'll try to like figure that out for the next lecture. But I sort of was not, oh yeah.
You should ask Copilot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you know what I did? Actually, let me show you that. So I said, what are all the places I call the search text function? And then it was just like, explaining how I can use find all references, which is like, the whole reason that I even prompted it in the first place. But you're right, I should ask like why doesn't find all references work for that? Okay, let's actually try it at workspace. Why does the find all references for search text not show all the places that actually call it? Let's see. Yeah, it's related to static code analysis, which I think we've mentioned. Oh, if it's being called dynamically via a variable or attribute. I think that's probably what's happening. Because even we saw how it's being used in this test search engine is like, we just have engine equal to like the search test object dot engine, and then, it's equal to, we just have like a function, a variable name called search that is equal to this function, okay? So then the way it's actually used is like this, okay? Where we'll use this variable that is storing a function object and then calling it on some parameters. But I think we would probably want to explore this a little bit more to see how it's used in the actual implementation to understand why that's not happening. But anyway, let me continue with showing my conversation with Copilot. So like I said, I had actually asked it, like what are the places that search text is used, and like I showed you, it just said to use find all references, okay? Then I just asked what features use the search text function. I basically just re-asked the question. This time it used the actual feature, or the function, it used the search text function as context. And then it started saying this, okay? So it said like, here are some examples. It's typically used for like pattern matching or pattern searching. Here's some examples. And honestly, like I was reading the first couple and I was like, okay, yeah, that probably is where it's implemented. And then I saw this like incremental search thing and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like I've never actually seen this like thing mentioned at all in this code base, and I've sort of been working on this code base for a couple of years now. So then I did a global search for incremental search. And literally the only place that is mentioned is in this like to-do file from, like this was the original to-do list of like when the project started that just says incremental search, okay? So what this is called, just generally in LLMs, is called hallucinating, when it just sort of like creates something that isn't actually real and gives that as like a valid answer, all right? And so I do want to just emphasize this point. There was like this really awesome study done by like Microsoft researchers and people who engineered GitHub Copilot, and they looked at like a bunch of people's like actual usage of GitHub Copilot and the acceptance rate for like code suggestions, okay? And we're going to cover code suggestions in the last part of this lecture, where GitHub like basically gives an auto completion for some code. That acceptance rate is only 27%, okay? Which is really low. That means like, you know, only 1 out of 4 times that there is a suggestion, not like you'll see it'll maybe suggest like 10 different things. It's not that like 2 or 3 of those 10 things, or like 27% of those suggestions are good. It means that when a suggestion is even like presented to the developer, only 1/4 of the time is that suggestion taken, okay? So, and these are done by like professional developers who are like working with a code base like instantly, right? So, you know, like why is this like so low? And the reason is goes back to this idea of like how LLMs sort of produce the answer and us needing to establish trust with them, okay? This is just like something that I encountered that I thought was pretty funny, where whatever you ask of Copilot, it's not going to know that it's like a bad, like whatever, irrelevant question or impossible question. It's just going to produce an answer that fits its sort of like autocomplete model most with like the highest probability, okay? So keep that in mind when like asking for things or just interfacing in the chat. In this example, I just like highlighted this function, and I just did like the dash fix, okay? And then it says like to solve the problem, there is no problem. I would remove the event parameter, there is no event parameter, from the toggle tapped event method since it's not being used. And again, there is no event parameter, right? So I just really want to emphasize this point. It's like one of the biggest things that's like even currently being researched about these LLMs in software engineering is like how can a software engineer develop trust or like verify the things that a large language model is outputting, okay? So I just really want to emphasize that you shouldn't be using these things blindly and like really thoroughly sort of like explore the answers and make sure that it's giving something valid, okay? And then to make this just a bit more clear, I did the at workspace thing. I said, what are the places in the code that call search text? One thing one thing that can help identify that GitHub Copilot is like not giving you the best answer is when these things, when it's referencing specific functions that are in white, okay, that they don't have like an actual hyperlink to, you should be suspicious of that, okay? Because you can't actually click on any of these function names and it won't take you anywhere. So that's maybe, you know, like, I guess, I don't know, strike one or like a red flag basically for some answer just being kind of like hallucinated, okay? Eventually, I just asked it again. I couldn't tell you why it answered it better on this one. I maybe just specified the actual name of the file. I said, what are the functions in editor.py that interact with the search text function? And then it actually was able to give a pretty good list, okay? It actually gave these with like in hyperlink form, basically, with the find event. And then it looks like it's actually using this search object. So maybe that actually helps us figure out why it wasn't showing it before. I imagine that there's like a search variable over here that's just equal to the search engine. Maybe I won't look for it right now. But it looks like there's this search.find, and then eventually I think find must call, I guess, setup. Let's see if setup. Okay, maybe I'm getting a bit into the weeds here. I just want to figure out how it's actually calling search text, but it actually does call search text. You can verify by sending a debugger and then using these different features in idle and sort of like see that it is being called. But I don't know, I thought this was pretty interesting that our conventional methods weren't really able to give us this answer, but eventually GitHub Copilot was able to. So just keep this in mind as like it's a tool in the toolbox for you to use to understand some code, but it's not like, you know, something that's like always correct or always able to give you what you're searching for, okay? Okay, let's move on to code generation with Copilot. Are there any questions just about the activity that we just did, or you know, using explain or the chat feature or anything like that? Any questions? Okay. Awesome. Okay, so you can think of GitHub Copilot as being able to help in these like 2 different programming tasks. Okay, these are maybe like 2 of the most common things that you'll be working on in a large code base. You know, in industry is first you'll have to like understand some code, and then you'll have to actually write some code, right? what we showed earlier was the code comprehension features of GitHub Copilot. Now I'm going to cover the code generation features of Copilot, okay? So there's sort of like two things I want to show here. First is using like specific comments, like docstring comments for a function for it to sort of give you like the actual text of a function, and then a single like inline comment or a single line comment that can give you like one line at a time, okay? So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's go to the format region, and also like feel free to copy what I'm doing here. I think it's just like getting more practice using GitHub Copilot and using the shortcuts will help a lot here. So I think we're all sort of familiar with this format region class. We've done it a couple times in lecture. We kind of know that it implements these things like indent region event, dedent region event, comment region event, etc. So what I want to do is actually write a new function. Let's just call it prepend region event, okay? And you can actually see it's like already giving me suggestions. So when you start typing, actually you'll just get these sort of like autocomplete suggestions. The way to accept it is just by pressing tab, okay? When you press tab, it'll just accept that code suggestion. And then, okay, this is, it's already giving me like the whole thing because I had done this before, like working on Copilot, but let's just first write out the docstring. Man, I really wish this wasn't happening. So let me do like prepend the same string to the start of every line in the editor. The string to prepend should be blah, blah, okay? Let's just do this. So basically what I'm saying is like, if I like highlight some code here and go to format, we have this like comment out region, which we'll just add, two things before. I'm saying like I want to just prepend some word, right, to the start of whatever is highlighted. And then once you like do this docstring comment, there's sort of like the end of this docstring comment is something that Copilot recognizes and then will generate the full body of the method for this, okay? And the point I want to make here is that this is a very simple task for Copilot because it's able to pattern match very well, all right? So if you look through all of these region event methods in format.py, they all have a very similar structure where first it'll always call get region and it'll like access the body of the editor. And then it'll have a for loop that does some operation to whatever it retrieved from get region, okay? And then all it does is set region, where it basically like takes all these modifications and then just puts it back into whatever we had selected, okay? So this, I think, is quite simple for Copilot to do because there's already like so much example code to do this, all right? And then I'll just go ahead and press tab, and I think we can just sort of do a quick like code reading here and sort of see that this will probably work as expected, but there are sort of other things that we would need to figure out, like how to actually invoke this method. Like we have defined, uncomment region event here, but there's something that actually links it to the menu option and then actually calls this uncomment region event. I'm not going to show that right now because that's part of project 3, so maybe you can take some time to work through that. But I just want to emphasize this sort of feature where you can leave a docstring comment, and this is something that's commonly been recommended by people who develop this, people who use this a lot, that the quality of these docstring comments help very much. So you might even want to put like, and this is how like Copilot does its automatic documentation, where you can say like args, the inputs will be, okay, I guess this one is just saying the event object triggered by the user action. It's even like auto-completing the documentation. And then you can say like returns, I think this doesn't return anything. Okay, it just returns break, returns the break string. So that's one way to sort of invoke GitHub Copilot autocomplete or code suggestions. Couple pieces of advice for this. This requires you to like know exactly the scope of the methods, okay? So this was a very trivial example because I just kind of made it up and it was convenient for Copilot. Hopefully you can sort of tell from this though that having a good like mental breakdown or like decomposition not a mental breakdown, sorry. Well, having a good like decomposition of the problem in your mind will help with like understanding, okay, I need this function, this function, this function, and these are what the inputs and outputs should be, okay? Sort of like narrowly planning out what each function should be is going to help so much for Copilot being able to give you code suggestions, okay? I mean, hopefully, when you start working on project 4, you'll start to sort of see that when you ask like a big function for it to write, or like have a function with a very big scope, it's not going to do so well creating that, but more just like smaller functions with well-defined objectives, it performs much better, okay? Are there any questions on this? Like the autocomplete? Again, the way you can do it, if it's not showing immediately, you might want to like, once you finish a comment and you can just like wait for a second, it'll typically generate the suggestion, okay? Okay, let's move on to the other way to automate, oh, yeah, question.
I have a question. Is there any way to, when it shows autocomplete, is there any command to like ask for like a different?
Yes, okay, I think I'll show that in this next example right now. There is a way to do that, I think I don't remember the shortcut, but we'll find it. Okay, so let's do this, and if I forget to answer that question, just re-raise your hand and let me know. Okay, so here's what I think is maybe a more useful thing for a large code base, okay? Keep in mind that when you're making like modifications in a large code base, you're not always going to be writing like new function or like several new functions, okay? In project 3 you are, because that's because you're writing maybe like a whole new feature. But if you're like fixing a bug or working on an existing feature, you aren't necessarily going to be defining new functions, okay? And that's where we're able to use like inline comments and generate line by line code suggestions, okay? And this is going to sort of also be a hint for the project 2 sort of like optimal approach. Let's just say, let's say we're working on project 2 and we sort of just got assigned that task. We know we've maybe done some previous like code comprehension, or maybe we used Copilot to figure out that the go-to line event is what, we need to first modify to get the total number of lines, right? Let's just write a single comment that's like, get the total number of lines in the active Python editor, okay? And then if you do this and then you just waited a second, right? It'll do total lines equals self.text.index and -1c dot split, and then, okay, this syntax here, right? So, this is the question that you were just asking actually about seeing alternate suggestions, okay? It doesn't always have more than one suggestion, but you can actually, you'll get this little like GUI thing that pops up here with multiple approaches, okay? And I think there's a shortcut for like opening them all and then like navigating through each one. I don't remember what that shortcut is. You could probably Google it pretty quickly and figure it out. But I know that if you're not seeing this thing, it means that it only has like one code suggestion, okay? Sometimes it'll have multiple code suggestions and it'll tell you how many, and you can sort of navigate through it like this. So interestingly, actually, it's giving us these two approaches, and one is, the only difference between them is using end -1c and versus end. I mean, I think I had a screenshot here where I did this like earlier today, and it was only showing end and it wasn't giving the two options. I think this is maybe just another example of wanting to verify the output here. We'd probably want to, accept. Oh, oops. Yeah, so we would probably want to accept it, and then use like a debugger or like print it out or log out the value to just make sure that it's the right thing. But I'll say like this is one of the better approaches for project 2 using this. Yours, I think, it uses the history of what you've programmed in the workspace as things to suggest. So maybe it's because I had implemented it this way that it's, giving something like this. Yours might show like a slightly different code suggestion. Remember, these things are not deterministic, so just because you give the same prompt as me, it might give a different suggestion. But I guess I'll tell you right now that this, or some variant of it, basically using the text variable and then accessing a specific index, is one of the better approaches here, and then doing the same thing in the go-to class, okay? You want to try to not use a new parameter here or anything. We're trying not to like have a new constructor over here with that new parameter. I'll just leave it at this line being a very big hint towards the sort of like optimal approach for project 2, okay? But then like let's just get the, so right now it's prompting like the autocomplete is get the line number from the user. Maybe it just like expects that that's what we want. That's not what I'm about to prompt right now. I'm about to prompt get the current line, because remember that was one of the requirements for project 2. Get the current line that the user is on, and then let's just see what it does here. Okay, awesome. Yeah, current line equals self.text.index insert.split. And also notice, paying attention to like code quality issues, this is using maybe the rights or a better, variable naming convention rather than something like camel case, which would be current line or total lines like this. You'll notice that the rest of the code base does not use this sort of like naming convention, so it's cool to see that this is also like picking up on the code style of the code base, okay? But like I said, I know that this is right just because I've worked on this code base a lot, but you should verify everything. I'll just give a hint that I prompted a very similar thing in query.py and it gave something that was wrong, okay? So just pay attention to what it's outputting and make sure you test and verify everything. I will show the eventual correct answer maybe like next week after the code review process for project 2 is done. And then the last thing I want to show is this, using the fix. Where is it? Okay. Now, so we've wrapped up these 2 demos, like the inline, sort of making a comment and getting a code suggestion from Copilot. The next one is using this fix command to have code modification, okay? Again, I think this one is something that's more useful than that very first thing I showed, because this is typically the type of work that you'll be doing on a large code base, right? You'll be modifying an existing function. So let's just do, let's say we want to do the small task of like modifying this prompt, right? Again, we'll do the command I, that'll bring up the inline interaction with GitHub Copilot, and then we'll do .fix or /fix, and then we'll want to give like a helpful prompt to cause that change, right? So let's say modify the prompt that asks the user for a positive number. Say the maximum number of lines from earlier that is the upper bound for what a user can input. Yeah, let's say get rid of the big equals end of file part. I'd probably want to write this a bit more clear, but I also want to type fast for and have this example be done. Let's see what it comes up with here. So whenever you ask it for fix, I think I'm not able to scroll down. Usually it gives an explanation for like what to fix, but I'm not able to see it right now. That's a bit annoying. But okay, I'm just going to accept it. So you'll be able to see like what the actual changes. It'll be like highlighted in yellow over here. And when you press accept, then it'll just like automatically make that change. It looks like it just says enter a positive integer 1 to total lines, okay? And by the way, this is just like some Python like shorthand, I guess. You can put like these brackets as long as you have an F, it's for like format string basically at the start of the string. And then anything that you put in these brackets can just be a variable from earlier, okay? Like a variable that Python has already sort of like executed or knows. And then so then I think this is correct. We can actually just want to emphasize this process of running it to C. So let's just do file, new file. Let's just do this, do show line numbers. And let's just do edit line. Awesome. Yeah, enter positive integer 1 to 7. And I think that's because we did n minus 1. If this was just end, it would have been 1 to 8 actually. And that's something you would be able to find out by verifying the output that it had sort of suggested, okay? So this was, us working on something that we have already worked on before, and when you're working with the code base quite frequently, you can sort of start to pattern match some of these things. That's how, like for example, I was able to recognize that this was probably correct because I had sort of like seen this similar syntax before. Now I want y'all to work on something that y'all haven't seen before and just sort of use Copilot to figure out where this feature is implemented and then make a very small code change. Let's do this for the last 10 minutes of class. What I'm going to demo is this simple feature, okay? I'm not going to tell you the name of it. You might already know the name, maybe just don't say it out loud. If you're really stuck after like 3 minutes, I'll tell you the name of this feature and that'll help you find where it is. But let's just do, okay, this is the feature. So if you type out print and then the open parenthesis, it shows the actual like official docstring comment for that feature, okay? Or sorry, for that function. So print is like an inbuilt function in Python, and it shows the docstring for it, okay? Same with like, when we want to convert something to a string, if you do str and then open parenthesis, it'll show you the docstring comment for that as well, okay? But say we have like def foo, and then we have some like docstring comment, like this is a foo function, and then like return 3, and I do foo, it doesn't show it right now, okay? Let's just leave it at that. I can maybe show some more intricacies of this method, but just keep in mind it was like I had typed out this function name, and then when you do the start parenthesis, it does it, okay? Just given that, try to figure out what this feature is, what it's called maybe, where it's implemented in idle, and then the specific fix I want you to do is notice right now, it gives the sort of pop-up right underneath where our cursor is. I want you to change it so that it shows like 3 lines above where our cursor is right now, okay? So like this whole thing should maybe be somewhere up here. Now, I just chose this for the sake of you having to make a change. I don't think that's actually a good change, but just we'll try to implement that change for the purpose of this activity, okay? So just be experimental in using Copilot. If you don't have Copilot, you can first try to do this without using Copilot and see. You can use ChatGPT, Google, etc., or try to answer these questions, conventionally without Copilot. Might be interesting to see if you're able to do it easily or not without Copilot. And I don't think we're going to have time to go over this, so we'll finish the activity and only leave at like 4:49 or 4:50, but submit the Google form before you go and maybe discuss with your partner a little bit, okay? I forget to use sometimes, but it's like an unhelpful answer. Yeah. So you first figure out what the name of the feature is by asking Copilot and see if it's able to know. Just describing what you're seeing in Copilot and just asking what that feature is. And it might give you the right answer. Okay, just so people aren't stuck, were people able to figure out the name of that feature, by the way? Yeah, can someone just say what it is? Call tip? Yeah, it's called call tip. And just share this really quickly. All I did was I had actually just asked GitHub Copilot, what is the feature that shows like the docstring comment when I open a parenthesis, and then it was sort of actually able to say, oh, this is a common feature in IDEs called show call tips. Okay, I'll try to find that right now, but hopefully, if you were stuck now, you can at least get unstuck. This is the example if you want to see what I had asked. Yeah. Try to do everything with Copilot if you have Copilot installed, including the code change in the second part of your code. So I just want to emphasize this if you're struggling a bit. The thing that you have highlighted when you press Command I matters a lot, okay? So make sure you have maybe the full function highlighted, not just like a single variable. That's gonna definitely change what the suggestion is. All right, we're at 4:49. If you haven't finished the activity, don't worry. Maybe you can wrap it up like later today or tomorrow. We will eventually count this for participation, but I would you can finish the activity doing it, fully to completion basically, and then submit the Google form. All right. We won't be very strict about the time that this is submitted or anything, but please do try to do it. This kind of shows this activity is a bit more representative of using GitHub Copilot for the comprehension and generation part of the change, okay? So please just at least practice using it. Lastly, please do the reflection survey. We just want some feedback on how the course is going so far, and also just a few thoughts on how Project 2 went, okay? So please get this done tomorrow if you can.